Hi, Christian. How are you? Good to see you. Glad to be on board. How are things over there? Um, well, I think there's no way we can possibly do a podcast this week without starting on the big news, which is still big news here: the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Um, there are a lot of, information keeps coming out on this, right? It's been although it's petered out in the past few days. Um, Information that kept coming out after they initially said that this crooks who assassinated Trump didn't, immediately everybody came to the conclusion he acted on his own. He was some lunatic, some loose lunatic who could act on his own. Frankly, the information we're getting since then seems to call that into question. Which I will go into a bit later in the podcast. I think what we have to start out with, and was what this incident pointed out to a very disturbing degree, and which everybody's been commenting on, but I'll try to comment on it further. I'll try to cast further light on this. Is the appalling performance of the U.S. Secret Service. And indications are that we're deliberately or not, the Biden administration appeared to do everything possible to weaken the Secret Service protection around Trump at the time of the assassination attempt, knowing that there were other plots against him by Iran. Iran had threatened to assassinate him, and in fact, it was known at the level of the National Security Council that credible threats had been made to this effect by the Iranians. But we'll start out with a brief analysis of what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, on the day that they tried to assassinate Trump and came very close. I mean, if you believe in God, or if you don't believe in God, I think you'd have to have serious second thoughts about that after what happened. I mean, if he had turned his head just slightly at the wrong time, it would have been the end of him. In fact, it wasn't that he turned the head to avoid the bullet. It was more that if he had turned his head a little bit further to point at this graphic he was pointing out about, I think it had to do with border crossings or something. A split second later, the bullet would have blown his brains out, which is what he explained at the Republican National Convention. But first of all, I mean, what's very clear in the aftermath of all this is that Matthew Crooks, the assassin, had been observed moving around the grounds of the rally way before he was finally noticed on top of the roof of that building with a 150-meter clear sight onto the stage from where Trump was speaking. He had tried to cross the metal detector to get into the rally with a range finder. These are binocular type objects, contraptions, which are used to find range for hunters. They use it, and it has a certain, you can actually measure the range you're at from a target through these binoculars, or arrive at an approximation. He had these on him when he tried to cross the metal detectors, and they detected it. And at that point, I am not sure, in fact, if he was told not to go in, or if he was at that point pointed out. No, I think he was allowed into the ground area, but he was pointed out as suspicious. This in itself is very strange to me, Christian, because when I had attended a Trump rally here in Miami, where I am, Doral, a few days before that, there were Secret Service people at the metal detectors. They were actually managing the metal detection devices. And I am sure if I'd had something like that on me, I would have, I don't know, I think I would have probably been denied permission to enter, or it would have been confiscated, or they would have made some kind of comment. He was allowed to enter the grounds, I believe, with the rangefinder. Okay. Then he moved around. He was dressed, I think, in some kind of camouflage type deal, which isn't bad in itself. A lot of people go to Trump rallies and dress in all kinds of strange outfits. In fact, one of the Trump caps is a camouflage type design on it, so it's not that in itself is not that strange. But he had been singled out as suspicious when he entered the grounds. Frankly, I think he should have been not allowed in at all. But anyway, he was moving around. He was already suspicious, and he made it. He didn't have his weapon on him, obviously, when he entered through the metal detectors. But he must have made some arrangement to pick it up somewhere. Maybe he'd reconnoitered the grounds beforehand, or, as there is serious grounds to believe, someone may have done the reconnaissance before him, if indeed it was part of a wider conspiracy, and perhaps place the rifle in a place where he could pick it up. It was an AR-15 rifle. But he managed to make it up to the roof with his rifle on a ladder that either he placed or somebody placed for him. He bought a ladder, I think, at a Home Depot store, which presumably right on the day that he was supposed to do the shooting. And it's right now uncertain whether this was the ladder he placed. There are other reports that the ladder he bought at Home Depot is not the ladder that was placed along the building to get to the roof. Now, this whole thing, the roof, of course, is very mysterious. Why this roof within strategic tactical range of Trump's podium was left unguarded. They should have it would have been an ideal place, as they point out, for a counter sniper team, or at least put someone there to monitor. Ideal place to monitor the crowd, just a policeman there with a walkie-talkie and binoculars. That would have been the normal thing you would do with a place like that, assuming you don't decide to put a counter sniper position on it. Of course, we all know there was nothing. There was nothing. Members of the public, a lot of them. It wasn't just one guy. There was the whole consternation there. People screaming, "There's a guy on the roof with a rifle." The police. There were policemen around trying to get up to the roof, and of course, when they were getting up there, he signaled. He threatened them with the rifle. And look, there's been a lot of criticism, but I guess it's just a normal human reaction. You're hanging on to a ledge. Someone threatens you with a rifle, you're going to let go. All right. I don't think any normal person would, and these policemen are the most trained people. They're not Delta Force or anything like that. They're not special forces. They're not going to reach for their gun at a moment where they're hanging onto a ledge and someone's pointing at them with a rifle. But he did set off the alarm. At that point, the police set off the alarm. They should have done it a lot earlier, but at that point, they set off the alarm and they checked there was a guy on the roof with a rifle. They say that he was within sight of the counter sniper teams 7 minutes before the shots rang out. In other words, 6 minutes before the police saw him. All right, this is denied by the Secret Service. Frankly, how counter sniper teams could be alert as to threats in the area without seeing a guy on the roof with the rifle considerably before he starts shooting is in itself doubtful. But look, I'm preparing to give everybody the benefit of the doubt here. Okay, assuming that nobody knew he had a rifle on the roof, there was no alarm, there was no general knowledge of this before a policeman actually personally spotted him on the roof, and at that point alerted through the tactical alert system that there was a threat, an ongoing threat. There was still 1 minute and a half, 86 seconds, I believe, between that moment and the time that the shots were fired. That would have been enough time to remove Trump from the stage and for a counter sniper team to blow him away. Okay, to blow away the killer, the assassin. This did not happen. It did not happen. I've been told, it's been reported that, in fact, a counter sniper did locate him and asked for permission to shoot him, and it was denied. Again, the Secret Service denies this, but the normal what they say. I mean, according to the protocol and to the SWAT standard procedures followed in these situations, when you see an imminent threat, an elite counter sniper trained for this kind of situation immediately reacts. He shoots them. He takes them out. He does not ask for permission. This is only in cases where there are hostages. Maybe innocent civilians are on the way. There may be negotiations in progress. In the hostage siege, yes, he would have to coordinate with other counter snipers and with superiors as to whether he can take advantage of a situation to shoot to take out the threat, to take out a terrorist, an armed terrorist. But in that kind of situation, which it was not a siege situation. There were no hostages. There were no innocent civilians that could conceivably be hit on the way. There was no reason why any counter sniper of the U.S. Secret Service or even the Pennsylvania police, which apparently may have had their own teams there, could not have immediately taken him out if they had seen him before he tried shooting Trump. He got 5 to 8 shots out. 5 to 8 shots. I mean, it's a semi-automatic weapon. So it wasn't like a machine gun that fires 60 shots a moment. I mean, there was a lot of time in which this could have been done. Plenty of time, which a counter sniper could have taken him out. It wasn't done. It didn't happen. So it's, it stinks, Christian. I mean, a lot of mistakes happen, and I don't know how these things are. I mean, a lot of strange mistakes sometimes happen, but it stinks. It stinks to high heaven. Okay, now let me we'll get off the roof here with the sniper, and we'll get on to what the Secret Service is doing. As Trump was only 5 days away from being officially nominated the Republican presidential candidate, based on that premise, which would normally, by standard procedure, would allow his campaign to ask for more Secret Service protection. This wasn't given. It wasn't given. In fact, what I've been told was that Kamala Harris had some sort of event in Pennsylvania on that particular day, and that personnel from Trump's protection detail, were transferred to protect Kamala Harris. But this is really strange because it so happened that, not strange, I would say rather difficult to understand or to excuse, because on that days prior to that, they had received the National Security Council, the U.S. National Security, the White House, had pretty credible, they had, shall we say, a credible threat or a serious threat that Iran was plotting some kind of assassination attempt against Trump. I don't think Iran had anything to do with this particular incident. It would have to be, they say actually this kid, I'm going to go into this further, had established foreign bank accounts. This is according to the FBI, through which we're receiving money. It's possible. I don't think, given the circumstances, that Iran would have been directly involved in this. But anyway, given the heightened threat around Trump of a terrorist attack, the fact that he was 5 days away from being nominated as the Republican presidential candidate, given that the rhetoric against him was getting to be vitriolic levels. I mean, you had a reporter for the BBC, all right, and I'm not, I'm not here accusing the BBC, but you had a reporter from the BBC, a guy from Abramovich, saying days earlier that Biden should contract an assassin to kill Trump. This was a reporter of the BBC, right? This is how wild it had become, how wild things had gotten. And he was given low-grade protection that day. Obviously, the Secret Service, it would appear to me, they did not have somebody at the metal detectors. That was probably managed by the local Butler, Pennsylvania police, and probably because of a shortage of personnel, and that the bodyguards around Trump were replaced by these two women who were too short to cover him properly, and looked very unprofessional from the way they seemed to conduct themselves when he was being taken to the car after the shooting. We got cut off there. We were talking about how about Secret Service agents from Trump's security detail had been transferred to protect Kamala Harris because she was having some sort of event in Pennsylvania at the same time. Are you getting me, Christian?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Are we recording?
Yeah, it's recording now.
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about how, apparently people from Secret Service agents assigned to protect Trump have been transferred over to protect Kamala Harris because she was having an event in Pennsylvania at the same time. Okay. All right, listen, I don't want to draw any conspiratorial things here. When you accuse a government of conspiring to assassinate or being part of a conspiracy to assassinate, or being some sort of premeditated scheme to assassinate the presidential candidate, you're dealing with very, very serious stuff. So, we're going to make no accusations here. We're going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, okay? And we're going to work at the moment from the premise that this was all due to a massive screw up. Okay. In fact, I'd heard that they had detached people from Trump's Secret Service detail to another event previous to this. At first, I was told it was Joe Biden. It was not confirmed, but apparently it did happen, but it was not Joe Biden. It was Kamala Harris, the vice president. Okay. All right, let's go from the premise that, all right, a vice president does take precedent, I suppose, by normal procedures to a presidential candidate for protection. But still, in view of the circumstances, you seriously have to ask yourself, is the Secret Service brain dead? All right? Are they brain dead? Bureaucracies are like this. They become brain dead. Are they brain dead to the point that they would actually detach agents from a individual, a political leader who's running for president, who is being threatened by the whole world, by everybody? I mean, how many people are threatening Kamala Harris right now? I can understand if she's on a foreign trip, but Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania is going to be the target of an assassination anybody ever sees Kamala Harris. I mean, she's not in the news that much, except now, because now she's going to replace Biden on the top of the ticket. But back then, I mean, who was under greater threat, objectively speaking, Trump or Kamala Harris? Obviously, the answer is Trump, and the Secret Service did not take this into account when making the decision to switch personnel from Trump to Kamala Harris. All right, let's start with that. But I mean, there's another point we have to comment here. This White House, or the Democrats, don't seem to be very interested in protecting rivals to President Biden. We saw this some time back when Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's running for president as an independent, and in fact began his candidacy running against Trump for the Democratic nomination, was denied Secret Service protection. They've given it to him now, finally, after the assassination attempt on Trump. I think it's been finally given it. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was a highly controversial character. He's the son of an assassinated senator, nephew of an assassinated president, was denied Secret Service protection. They wouldn't give it to him. No deal. You're out. Until now. And they played politics with it. I mean, after Trump was convicted in the New York trial, a Democratic congressman asked to pull his Secret Service protection, but because he was a convicted felon, he somehow no longer qualified for Secret Service protection. So they obviously don't like giving Secret Service protection to rivals. They use it for political purposes. And this is a pretty shoddy way of proceeding with protecting the lives of people who are threatened, all right? The lives of political leaders who are a lot more threatened than Kamala Harris. Okay, to start with. Okay, now let's proceed with this. Presumably was the reason why lower grade agents were assigned to Trump. And we had that very embarrassing scene there in which these two women assigned to protect Trump. One of them, frankly, tried to cover him, was very, very, very short. She couldn't cover him. That's when, in fact, I was able to give his clenched fist salute, but his power salute. But it was a great photo op, made possible perhaps by the fact that this woman was too short to protect him. But still, if there had been another gunman there, if there had been other snipers, or if they hadn't managed to shoot the sniper that fired the shots, and he'd been able to keep shooting, they would have blown Trump's brains off. Okay. So I don't believe that the second shooter is now being speculated or thrown out on social media. I don't believe that's true, because if there had been, he would have shot Trump at that very moment. Okay, he would have gotten his flamethrower went out at that moment. And there were no more shots fired at that particular moment. So, that I don't think there was a second gunman, as people are saying. Okay, let's go now to the background. Let's leave the fact that this was a completely, a brain-dead operation by the Secret Service at the service of following orders from administration. Obviously, this gives no priority to protecting rival politicians, right? Let's just say, okay, that's okay, the White House has the right to make its decisions. The Secret Service has shown up personnel, as now they're claiming, and so on. Oh, well, let's talk about the snipers a bit now. No, I think we've already touched that, so we'll leave that. All right, now let's go on to the background of Matthew Crooks. Matthew Crooks, the killer, the potential killer. I was very surprised, me and other experts, people who know a lot more of this than I do, at the way that the moment in which his name was identified by the FBI, they immediately, instantly, this was on CNN. I was watching CNN. I don't know what the other networks did, but CNN immediately said that he's a Republican and he had acted entirely on his own. They immediately came out of that information. That he acted entirely on his own. How could they know that one moment after they had identified his name? How could they possibly know that? It's ridiculous to immediately assume that he had acted on his own. What evidence is there to prove that he had acted on his own? Not that there was evidence to prove he had not acted on his own, and we still don't have anything conclusive about that, although there are certain indications that he may have been part of a wider plot. But they immediately jumped to that conclusion. In other words, that was a narrative. He acted on his own, and he was some crazy Republican, possibly someone who had been at the rally or something like that. That was going to be the instant narrative they had immediately cooked up at CNN, right? Obviously. Okay. But then let's look about his background a bit further. Cruz had been not just a Republican, and this has come out publicly later. But although he had registered as a Republican to vote in these elections years earlier, I'm trying to get to the info here. He had contributed $15, which means that he would be in some way connected to an organization called Progressive Turnout Let me get the exact name here. The Progressive Turnout Project. He had contributed $15, and I don't think he contributed $15 to a kid of, an 18-year-old kid. This happened 2 years earlier. He had obviously contributed $15, which would implicate some sort of connection. Either somebody had told him to, or perhaps to be maybe to be put on their list, or to enter into contact with them, or to maybe to work for them. He had contributed $15 to the Progressive Turnout Project. Now, this is a political action committee which conducts voting turnout operations for the Democratic Party. It's probably controlled by very far left people. On its website, it says that its purpose is to motivate inconsistent voters. Motivate inconsistent voters. All right. Obviously, it's they must have, for any corporation, any organization which is dedicated, or whose purpose is to motivate sales, or motivate voters, or motivate viewers, must have all kinds of psychological ways of motivating or making people do things. All right. Of course, which would indicate that if this guy Matthew Crook was on the radar of this organization, then they had people who knew him. I mean, the voter turnout this project operates through must have a very vast network in all the counties. They're very active in Pennsylvania. It's one of the swing states. They would have a lot of people there, knowing who the Democrats are in which district, and something about them. It's very possible that they would have some kind of knowledge about this kid, about Crooks. We know that he had the profile of a psychotic, the profile of a psychopath, someone who, full of contradictions. On the one hand, he worked at an old people's home, which was a social worker, again, which would put him in the Democratic Party radar. He was described as remote, retraído, kind of not very sociable. He didn't have a lot of friends, supposedly. Not a very social person. Had a kind of an inferiority complex. He was denied access to his high school rifle team, although the fact he was the big rifle enthusiast. Again, probably due to the fact, to the problem of the social skills. They probably just didn't get along with people very well. He was alienated. He had an alienated personality. At the same time, he entertained himself with watching very violent videos. He was a subscriber to a social media account called Demolition something or other. I forget the name right. Which puts out extremely violent videos of murders, killings. This is watched as his entertainment. Right? And on top of that, he was a big gun enthusiast. Right? Now, anybody who would know the neighborhood, anybody who would know the area there, know the people there, I mean, the teachers knew him. His mother was a Democrat. He was a social worker. He contributed money to the voter turnout project. There may be knowledge. They may have known people, maybe extreme left elements connected to the Democratic Party, may have known there was this somebody with the personality of a psychopath who they might be able to manipulate into possibly conducting an assassination. This is purely hypothesis on my part, but this is certainly a possibility. It is certainly a possibility. It's in the realm of the possible. Since then, we found out that this kid had apparently a couple of offshore bank accounts. Now, I would find it very strange that a social worker, alienated sort of kid, not very sociable, not involved in any business activities, would have one, let alone two, foreign bank accounts. This is what the FBI has come up with after getting into his telephone, where you also had pictures of Trump as well as other politicians. You had pictures of Biden. I guess he had pictures of Kamala. He had pictures of a lot of other politicians. But he had a schedule of Trump political events, like the rally that he was holding in Pennsylvania. So obviously Trump was obviously more of a target. He was focusing more on Trump than he would have been focusing on anybody else. That's what we get from information so far taken out by his phone, which I must say is yet very incomplete. I mean, drips and drabs have filtered out, but the FBI seems to be quite secretive about what they're finding out about crooks.
Take a look.
But anyway, we have certainly circumstantial. We're dealing with certainly circumstantial possibilities that crooks may have been put up to this. Aside from the fact that somebody seems to have placed a ladder there for him to climb. Apparently, the ladder that was found at the scene was not the ladder he bought at Home Depot. Also, how did he get the rifle? He didn't bring the rifle through the metal detector. Obviously, he wouldn't have been allowed in. Probably would have been arrested. But somebody, obviously, the rifle must have been placed somewhere along the grounds where he could pick it up. He may have done this before, but certainly in a hit type operation, this is how they would proceed. This is exactly how they would proceed. So there are a lot of doubts surrounding this, Christian. Very, very disturbing doubts. I find it, as an American, I find it very, very difficult to accept that my government, under whoever, would assassinate or be complicit, or the party of a candidate, maybe it's not by personally, would be complicit in the assassination of a presidential candidate. But it stinks. All right, it really, really, really stinks. To be very honest with you. Apparently now Trump is better protected. He met with the Secret Service director, Cheetle, who, by the way, the fact that they had these two women protecting Trump. And listen, I'm not necessarily saying that women make bad agents. I'm sure they'll be very good in other aspects of Secret Service work, analysis, investigations, whatever. But in the personal protection detail, you got to have very strong, tough guys. I mean, big guys that can cover a guy, Trump, who's 6'5", who's 6'5", and to put these two women there. Apparently, it conforms to what Cheetle, the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheetle, her DEI regulations or protocol at the Secret Service, which is to include more women in protective details. She wants more women agents to be seen publicly as part of the Secret Service. This apparently may have compromised the security of Trump. You know, they put two women there who are obviously not up to task. So, I mean, you know, this just brings together a lot. You know, on the one hand, a brain dead bureaucracy. On the other hand, a White House that doesn't like protecting its, you know, gives its political rivals second tier and protection, no matter what the threat level may be. You know, and the you know, the questionable research on this guy Crooks. It all kind of comes together in this assassination attempt, which you know, thank God did not succeed. Thank God, literally, because it wasn't a thanks to anybody else. Christian, do you have any questions?
No, it's very strange in this case.
No, it's very strange. In this case,
The young man is in the open to see to Donald Trump play. How is possible? It's incredible.
how it's possible? It's incredible.
Quite amazing.
It's the hand,
So, I mean, you
the hand
wonder.
of the God.
They have to be God.
I mean, you wonder then what would they do if the attempt had been, say, by the Iranians, if they do, say, a drone, which they did actually. They used a drone to try to assassinate Maduro some years ago, if you recall. They've used that tactic already well, I mean, the CIA uses it all the time, but against terrorists. They've done quite a few of those. Quite. I mean, you've got intelligence services that use drones to assassinate terrorist leaders all the time. And you had a threat from Iran to assassinate Trump. Everybody knew this. This was apparently already on the books in the National Security Council, as I've already mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. And they had no drone protection. They didn't have drones themselves. You'd imagine at that stage you would have drones or helicopters flying around. They didn't have that. They didn't have that.
Strange, very strange.
So, it's all very strange. I mean, it's worth commenting on. As I say, I don't like making accusations. I'm not someone who likes conspiracy theories, but it's you know, it does stink to high heaven. We hope that the security now is better. In fact, I know it is. He should no longer hold any outdoor rallies. I think he should talk behind a bulletproof glass. I know he probably doesn't like to do that because it kind of disconnects him from his audience, but I think that should be required from now on, even if he doesn't like it. The Secret Service should insist on it. And they should have aerial protection outside. If there's anything outside, they should have aerial protection. Sniper teams on helicopters or drones, at least. So I hope that they do that. You know, obviously they are. I really hope so. That's to be hoped. Other news this week. Well, we've got the Venezuelan elections coming up. What do you think? I mean, it looks like I'm going to do it. I mean, it looks to me, I talk with the Venezuelans. They say, oh, no, this time it's different. This time he's going to have to acknowledge his defeat. I mean, everybody knows he's not going to get even 20% of the vote by any fair election. If the election is anywhere near transparent. No, this time he's going to acknowledge his defeat. He's going to step down. He's making deals to get out and live in exile somewhere in Turkey or in Cuba. Or in Turkey, apparently he has apparently a big palace in Turkey. He's got money there. That's possibly a place where he could go. And they don't have an extradition treaty with the U.S., which makes he could stay there without the U.S. extraditing him on drug charges because he had an outstanding indictment. But I don't think so. I think that he's going to go ahead and reverse the results. Okay, somehow they we can invent results, cancel the whatever the opposition reports, and stay on. And it's all up to the army. Again, you've got generals saying, no, this time will be, this time we're going to respect the Constitution and the popular will without saying exactly where it's going to go. They can't possibly say that before an election. But that can easily be switched that to say, all right, we respect the Constitution and where the vote where it's going to go, and we accept the fact that Maduro said he won the election. The generals can switch. Can do that very easily. That's not a problem. Not a problem. Not a problem. They've done it before. So I expect he's going to do that. Maybe there may be a split in the army. Maybe this may be too much for a part of the army to stomach. Maybe there could be mutiny among some units. If that happens, you'll have a civil war, because I don't think the entire army will go along. You've got hundreds of highly trained Cubans, the Avispas Negras. They've been arriving in batches of 150 in the military transports, possibly supplied by Russia or Iran, because Cuba doesn't have the kind of airlift capability, who are taking positions in different cuarteles. You've got Cuban agents operating at unit level throughout the entire army, and at company level, Cuban advisors. And you've also got a lot of the army now in Guyana, on the border with Guyana. And apparently what I hear now is that Maduro is whipping up some kind of possible, confrontation with Guyana. And you've got a lot of the army down there. So he may well have a lot of the regular troops, regular units, maybe the units with the tanks, with the really offensive weapons, displayed along the border with Guyana, and have nobody in Caracas except maybe the few units directed by Cubans. So it'd be very difficult to orchestrate a coup, assuming that there are any generals that are actually prepared to go that far. Assuming the high command were willing to do that, which is very doubtful. So I think they're going to go for it, and I think we'll have the repression after something like that will be massive. It'll be brutal. You'll have to put thousands of opponents in jail. If there are any mass protests, the army will probably have to end up shooting, or the National Guard, whoever is controlling. So it's going to be a mass. I think this will cause a mass wave of migration outside of Venezuela. You could have absolute chaos, all right? Real chaos. What the U.S. does, we don't know. I mean, we've got a president who's said who's not in shape to run for a second term. That was just announced. He acknowledged that, and is he in any shape to make decisions? Is he in any shape to whip up diplomatic support from the rest of Latin America to intervene in Venezuela? Is he in shape to order any kind of U.S. intervention in Venezuela? You've got a Russian frigate and maybe a submarine running around there right now. Last I heard, it was the frigate, the Admiral Gorchkov, who had been in Cuba, was in port in the port in Caracas, Puerto La Guaira, I think. So that's the situation. It's and on top of this, you've got close to political instability in the U.S. Just think, Christian, if Trump had been assassinated, we would not only be talking about a political assassination at the highest level, we'd be talking about a political assassination that would trigger a civil war in the United States.
Yes.
So maybe that was part of the plan. Who knows? But assuming that there was a plan, of course, we got to be very careful here. I don't want to point that there wasn't. We assume there wasn't. So that's it's about an unstable situation that I've ever seen in the U.S. and in the Western Hemisphere. Right. What could happen in Venezuela on 28th of July when they have the elections is difficult to even fathom at this point. Difficult to unfathomable. If Maduro doesn't step down, which I don't think he will. Others, I may be wrong. I may be wrong on this. But the indications are that he won't.
That's it.
Do you have any comments to make?
That comes.
That's it.
Martin, we have 10 minutes in this
Martin,
in
we
this
have in this
podcast.
Oh, okay.
in this
Well, exactly to talk about Ukraine. Actually, it was very nice of Trump. It was very good news. No, I'm serious here. It was very good news to know that Trump made a call to Zelensky from the Republican National Convention after his nomination to reassure him that he would continue to have U.S. support and that he would take a leading role in trying to negotiate a deal with Putin. All right. So what I've been predicting all along, right, since we started these podcasts, that there would be negotiated settlement to this war is now confirmed. Okay. It's official. If Trump's elected president, there's going to be a negotiated solution. And even if Biden's, Biden no longer running, right? Even if Kamala's reelected, they're going to go for a negotiated settlement. They're talking now about a solution by which they would try to get Putin would keep at least part of what he's conquered, where his troops occupy. I hate to use the word conquered. The land, the part of Ukraine where his troops are actually present, they actually hold territory, and that would be in exchange for that. Russia would accept NATO protection of Ukraine, if not outright membership, which is what Ukraine is wanting. This looks to me like the start of a negotiating position, right? Looks like the start of a negotiating position. It's obviously what Trump is going to do, and he's much better at public diplomacy, private diplomacy, than Biden. I mean, Biden doesn't do diplomacy. He doesn't engage much with leaders or in an ongoing way. Yes, he meets them. He talks to them. He maybe makes certain agreements with them. But I certainly, in the state he's in, he's not in any state to conduct to have conducted any sort of ongoing, high-pressured private diplomacy with somebody like Putin. All right, I don't see it. Trump does. That's what Trump does. That's what Trump likes. He likes making deals. And so I think I see a possible light at the end of the tunnel for Ukraine if Trump is elected president in November. It's very encouraging because you have other people around Trump. You had J.D. Vance was as vice president, said he didn't care about it. We shouldn't. Doesn't matter to the U.S. what happens in Ukraine, which I think is terrible for any U.S. official to say that. I imagine he's going to change his position on that. You have this guy Tucker Carlson running around, the great conservative commentator, taking positions which quite frankly seem almost pro-Russian, pro-Putin, saying awful things about Zelensky. Listen, I'm not a big fan of Zelensky. I think Zelensky's made a lot of mistakes. But, to go after him the way Trump does, the way Tucker and other conservatives do, is overboard. I really think that's not the way to approach the Ukraine war. So on that sense, I think we've had some positive developments in Ukraine, right? Russia still has not captured Kharkiv. They've been after that. And they still don't even have Chasiv-Yar. We're throwing massive attacks, aerial and land attacks, to capture this ridge line, separating their zone of Bakhmut, the area of Eastern Ukraine they control in the Donetsk, Donbass, from the main industrial zone, which is at the other side of these hills, of this Chasiv-Yar ridge line. And if they took the ridgeline, they would dominate that zone, and it'd be very impossible to deny it to Putin from there on. They have not yet captured that ridgeline. So there's some hope for Ukraine. There is. That's perhaps the only positive development we have out of a very, very disturbing week. And we'll see what happens in Venezuela. As I say, I think that's going to be very bad news. Christian, have we run out of 10 minutes yet?
Thank you, Martin. See you the next podcast.
Thank you, Martin. See you the next podcast.
See you next podcast, Christian. Good to talk to you. Good to see you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. So subscribe and share this video.
Thank you.
Your podcast is your song, the conflict zone, and all of this channel, YouTube channel. Hi, Martin.
YouTube channel. Hi, Martin.
Bye, Christian.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the Conflict Zone, your go-to source for insightful discussions on international affairs, law, and security. I'm your host, Dr.Christian Barrientos Ichaso, and today we have a truly exceptional episode lined up for you. We're diving deep into the heart of the matter, exploring the unfolding events in Ukraine and shedding light on the expertise of a distinguished journalist who has covered such critical international conflicts. Our featured guest needs no introduction to those who closely follow military and intelligence matters. With an impressive career spanning numerous renowned media outlets, Martin Arostegui stands as a beacon of experience and knowledge in his field. Martin Arostegui's remarkable career. Martin Arostegui is not just a journalist, but a seasoned war correspondent who has ventured into the heart of conflict zones to bring us the stories that shape our understanding of global events. He's been a voice for the voiceless, reporting on the complexities and nuances of international conflicts that mirror the current situation unfolding in Ukraine. Arostegui's byline has graced the pages of reputable publications such as Voice of America, The Wall Street Journal, The Daily Telegraph, The Washington Times, CNN, FOX News, UPI, and France 24. His reporting has provided invaluable insights into the world of military operations, intelligence strategies, and geopolitical dynamics. Twilight Warriors, exploring military special operations. But Martin Arostegui's influence doesn't end with his reporting. He is also an accomplished author, having penned the enlightening book Twilight Warriors. This book delves into the world of military special operations, shining a light on the brave men and women who undertake covert missions to ensure our security. Analyzing the situation in Ukraine. Today, we're fortunate to have Martin Arostegui with us, providing his expertise on the developing situation in Ukraine. As tensions rise and international concerns mount, Arostegui's insights will offer a deeper understanding of the complexities at play and the potential implications for global stability. A message from Dr.Christian Barrientos Ichaso. Before we kick off our conversation, I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude to our audience. Your support, subscriptions, and engagement keep our mission alive to foster awareness and understanding of critical international matters. As an international company and business lawyer, I am deeply committed to sharing insights on international law, security, compliance, anti-corruption measures, tackling crime, and facilitating smooth trade relations. Stay connected. So whether you're an avid follower of international affairs, a business professional navigating the complexities of global trade, or someone seeking clarity amidst the chaos of international conflicts, podcast The Conflict Zone is your destination for accurate information and informed discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, grab your notepads, ready your questions, and get ready for an illuminating conversation with the one and only Martin Arostegui. Stay tuned because you won't want to miss a single moment of this episode. Thank you for joining us, and let's dive right into the heart of the matter.